Good morning, Jacob's Well. A plus to everyone for being here and skipping or at least delaying the lake for a few minutes. And I promise to do my very best to keep us on time. My name is Polnaszek, and I've been given the privilege of being a part of the recovery ministry here at Jacob's Well. And again, I want to thank Paul and I want to thank the overseers for just the trust that they've given me in this rich opportunity. I wanted to do this 3 times today. So we're talking about choices and consequences, and this idea of breaking free from these hurts, habits, or hang-ups, things that we do habitually that are causing us trouble. This is the one point. If you remember nothing about what I say today, I'm going to say this 3 times. And so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you in the middle of it, and I'm going to tell you what I told you. But it's based on a principle that Jesus stands at the door of your heart and he knocks. And the Bible also tells about us asking, and we're supposed to ask, seek, and knock. So we're going to do this 3 times. I've been quite overwhelmed with the response of people and the encouragement that I've received so far just in the previous 2 messages, and also throughout the week via email or texts. Addictions have been troublesome, hurtful, destructive in our community, and there seems to be a great sense of relief that Jacob's Well is moving in this direction. And again, I am so grateful and privileged to just be a part of this effort. But this is the first knock. This is Jesus standing at your door. God gives us the dignity of choice. It's the thing that separates humans from the rest of creation and all of the animal kingdom. You're not simply an animal. He gives us the dignity of choice. Every one of our choices come with consequences. We oftentimes focus on the consequence and we forget about our responsibility to choose. But everyone comes with a consequence. And the good news is it's never too late to choose life. So in my presentation or the message today, I'm going to be using the podium as my divide. And I'm going to call this hell-bent, destructive, death. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And then there's this other way that leads to life and wholeness and integration. We're working at Jacob's Well of integrating body, mind, soul, spirit, the whole being. In Hebrew, they call that shalom. We translate that as peace. And most of us think of peace as we just put our dukes down. But it's bigger than that. It's brighter than that. It's more powerful than that. It's this whole person, whole being in God of what we can be, and that's what we're focused on. So I want to bring us back to how God creates the world. In Genesis 1 and 2, God, the Creator, takes 6 days, and the first 5 days after he creates all of creation, every day, he looks at what he's done and he says, "This is good. This is good. This is good. This is good." And then on that 6th day, he creates human beings made in the very image, his very image. And the first time in the Bible, he says, "This is very good." It's like the pinnacle of all of creation is humanity. And then he places us on top to steward it. This is a story that we have lost, and it's part of the story that we try to recover in People of Recovery. It's our identity, it's our created purpose, and that's where we come from. The story that Paul gave me to preach on is based in Matthew 14, and when I looked at it the first time, I thought he had lost his mind. And if you know Paul, sometimes you can ask those questions. But as I studied it, I could see exactly what he saw before I saw it. And I had read this story many times, but I didn't understand it in the same way. So part of this exercise, what I'd like you to do is I want you to imagine a party. Again, Wisconsinites, we know how to party. But this is King Herod Agrippa, and he's throwing himself a birthday party in one of his many palaces. And not only that, but he's surrounded himself with all of his, I'm going to use the word sycophants. All that means it's a fancy term for people who would just appease him. They were like lackeys. They would tell him whatever he wanted to hear, and they were so impressed with him. But it was all of the dignitaries, all of the military leaders, it was all of the powerful people that would agree with him. He had them in at this party. So you can imagine the pride that this man had. But then the music is pumping, it's pulsing. And if you've been to a party, you know what that's like when it's just flowing, and then the drinks are flowing as freely as well. So there's the circumstance. This is the picture that we're entering into. And then for the main event, this young woman is brought up and dances before the king and all of his people. And the king is so pleased that in a moment he makes this brash oath. Up to half my kingdom, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And then what happens next? A prophet's head ends up on a platter. A family is destroyed. And all because these cycles of addictions have taken over and the king has lost sight of the consequences of his choices. Again, God did not create this world this way. It's not his design. But when he created us in his image and he put us in this beautiful garden, he's given us responsibilities. He's given us relationships. He's given us all of these opportunities and beauty. But there's this one tree. He puts this one tree. And for many years, I'm like, why in the world would you do this? How could you possibly put the poison that could ruin everything in the middle of this? And then worse than that, give us the opportunity to make that choice. And I'm convinced that without real choice, there cannot be real love. And real love allows for real consequences, both beautiful and difficult. So he set before us, again, he talks about in Deuteronomy, this is another prophet of God. This is the Old Testament. This is Moses speaking to all of Israel. And he's reminding them of this path, these two choices that God has set before them. And he says, see, I've set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command to you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. And then God tells Moses to remind the people, he wants you to choose life. It is God's desire, his will, that we would choose this path. This is what he longs for us to do, what he's created us to do. And then it says, so that you and your children may live. We're going to be looking at the story where the consequences of a parent's choices end in horrible places. And it's a choice that has a consequence. And when we make these choices, all of them have consequences, and all of them lead in different directions. God says when we go down this path, when we start on this way where we believe, I don't need to know about this God thing. Do you know who I am? I got this figured out. I don't need any help from anybody. He says that when we start down this path, he will give us over in the same sinful natures of our hearts. He will give them over to their shameful lusts, and he will give us over to our depraved mind. Because of that poisonous tree, all of us suffer from this. All of us have this condition that we are recovering from. And God loves us enough that if we're convinced that this is the way and we're determined to go hell-bent, he loves you enough to keep that dignity of choice. It is not by design, and it is not his will, but he loves you enough to allow you to choose. Because without choice, real choice, there cannot be real love. Again, now this banquet story wasn't the start of this trouble. It was a series of consequences from these choices that led up to this place. Number 2, he stands at the door of your heart and he knocks. Because our God of love is a gentleman. He'd never force himself. He'll never force you to choose. He loves you. He gives us the dignity of choice. All of our choices have consequences. But it's never too late to choose life. In the earlier story, I started with some jokes to kind of lighten it up. I ran over, so I'm cutting my jokes, so just don't. They get nervous back there, so. I grew up in Thorpe, Wisconsin, right? Woohoo! Yeah, and I know you're saying, can anything good come from Thorpe, right? Well, remains to be seen. I was the youngest of 6 kids. I was joking with my wife. I was looking for this outfit. It didn't come in my size, so I couldn't do that, But my father, who taught me many things, was a violent alcoholic. I grew up going to Catholic church and to Catholic school. I was kind of confused because we even had the nuns and priests over for dinner, but they never seemed to mention bruises or broken bones or stitches. While in Catholic school and Catholic church, I heard about this amazing God, this man Jesus who loved me and would die for me. And it sounded so compelling. But as I grew older, I kind of started thinking, either this Jesus isn't all that powerful, or he doesn't know who I am. And even worse, if he knew who I was, he didn't seem to care. So, my father taught me to pick up yourself by your own bootstraps. If you're going to be anything in this world, it's up to you. Nobody's going to give you anything. You got to make it happen. If you don't, it won't. And that proved pretty successful in the world for a while. I was financially successful. I had also determined I was never going to do what my dad did to me, to my children. Never beat them, never hurt them, never touch my wife. I just wouldn't let them see me drink, so I drank on the weekends, drank on business trips, because that's where a lot of business is done. I looked good. I had cars and houses and travel, nice suits. I wore really nice suits. I kind of miss them. But my heart was really dark. And I was very resentful for what had happened to me. And then I started focusing on the consequences of not my actions. And I was mad that I couldn't get what I wanted. And when things really got bad and I couldn't fix what I wanted, I'd even get madder. And so to kind of cover up what had happened before and my frustration now, I kind of used all sorts of substances. Because I just wanted to feel better. Occasionally I'd come to my senses after something stupid, and I'd turn my back and I would think about maybe there's another way. But eventually I'd get bored and I'd start going back because this is the way I knew. This is the way I was brought up. This is the way I was told. This is how the world works. Eventually, I got to a point where I became my father, and I was a violent, brawling alcoholic. And I wound up as a pile of human debris on my own kitchen floor. And from that place, I realized that it didn't matter what my father had done or anyone else had done to me. It's what I was doing to me. And if I kept going this way, it was going to end badly for me and for others. And so from that place, a literal pile or a regular pile, I cried out to God, the God I remembered as a child. And he rescued me. And I felt his presence come into my apartment, and I was all alone. And I don't know if he spoke audible words, but he forgave me. And I said, wherever you want me to go, I will go, and whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Because I knew this way was not going to happen. And so instead of just turning, I repented. This is where we get that idea. I started walking, acting, choosing, being differently. And that journey, that process has brought me even here to you. And now 32 years I've been sober from alcohol or drugs. Thank you. I have other less obvious addictions, which we can get into later. Control, coffee, just so you know. But God has given me an amazing privilege. Back when I was talking about how he creates in the world and then he puts us on the pinnacle, Ephesians 2:10 says that you are his greatest creation. And that he's prepared these good works for us to do. And so as I started on this journey and as I started understanding what God had said, he's given me the opportunity. I actually got to go to seminary. I met this amazing Christian woman who I don't believe loves me. Seriously, she's amazing. I have wonderful children who love me and love the Lord. I've been privileged to walk with people in recovery, to help them because of my story and to walk with them as they discover this pathway. These are just some of the good works he's prepared for me. I'm in my 35th year of ministry where I have a nonprofit where we do free healthcare through churches, offering to meet the most pressing need in any community. We've been doing it for 35 years. It's taken me to Africa, 3 countries, Romania for 5 years, most of Central America, in 21 states in the country. It's a privilege and an honor to meet human needs in Christ's name and then be able to share my story why. And God's given me that privilege. That's taken me to the White House in 2011, and we won a National Institute of Health award because of this model of ministry. These are the good works He's prepared for me to walk through, and now this with Jacob's Well. This risky behavior that we're talking about is, we're not just risking our lives and our children's lives, you are risking all that God has set out before you. And a life that is so filled of meaning and purpose that you couldn't even imagine. I still carry the consequences of my hell-bent behavior. Again, I don't want you to hear this glory road story. Most of you know this, where this guy tells a story. He was hell-bent, Jesus rescued him, and then he sails into the sunset, never having problems, no tears, health is great. That's not my story. I still suffer broken bones from my choices. I have broken relationships that have yet to be recovered. I have deep wounds that have grown old with me. Jesus makes it possible. He doesn't make it easy. So let's go into the Matthew story, and then you'll see why I was mad at Paul. See if we can do that. Matthew 14. Now Herod had arrested John the Baptist and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Soap opera. For John had been saying to him, "It's not lawful for you to have her." So Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people because they considered John a prophet. On Herod's birthday, the daughter of Herod, Herodias, danced for the guests and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here, on a platter, the head of John the Baptist." The king was distressed, but because of his oath and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who then carried it to her mother. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it, and then they went and told Jesus. I want to look at 4 addiction patterns in this story. We've talked about the drunken party. Again, this is the culture I grew up in. My dad owned a bowling alley and bar, and we partied better than most people partied. We were one of the popular bars at the time. Drinks flowed at Herod's party. Inhibitions were lowered. All of the guests and all of that expectation created this toxic positivity and the long-term consequences for him disappeared. Then there's the power or the look of calling it approval addiction. Again, you might not be an addict of substances like me. Again, for the record, I have never met an addiction I couldn't love, so just so you know. But approval is just as powerful. And Herod, I don't think he cared a lick about John, but he was caught. He was caught between these two things. He made this public oath in the drunken experience and his guests. And he was also concerned about all of the people who thought John was a prophet. What are they going to say? How is it going to look? Oftentimes in these circumstances, it's just as powerful as any of the other addictions. Herod craved validation more than truth. He was determined to be king of all of Israel, not just the tetrarch. And he was willing to do whatever it took in order to get there. There's a secular historian named Josephus who did this contrast between Agrippa and his brother Philip. And Philip was also a king, a tetrarch. But when Philip died, the people mourned his loss because he was such a man of integrity, even a failed man, but a failed man with integrity. They grieved his loss. And in the soap opera of fame, Salome, the girl who danced, actually ends up Philip's wife. Some poetic justice, maybe. Two brothers, same family lineage, two different paths and choices. And then there's this intergenerational exploitation, Herodias and Salome. The mom uses her daughter as a tool. She's just a way to get her needs met. Most of us know stories like this or have heard of stories like this in our community. I don't want to give you any more details than the ones you already have in your mind. This little girl, young lady, literally carries a severed head on a platter and then presents it to her mother. In families of great chaos, dehumanization and desensitization run rampant. These patterns are still alive in the Chippewa Valley, and it pulls in the next generation. Remember the Deuteronomy text. If you choose life, you get it and your children. If you choose death, you get it and you pass it on. Then there's this hunger for vengeance. Herodias couldn't handle John's truth, and silencing him was her compulsion. She was determined to not hear that anymore. Anyone who would stand in her way had to be eliminated. I'm concerned a little bit about some of you in the room or those online that might have already clicked off, or you're thinking again about the lake, simply because the message that I'm bringing might be a little too much. These cycles stay the same. We start down this path believing what we're pursuing is going to bring us something, and it ends up hurting our loved ones, ourselves. And then we end up doubling down in the same direction, and that spiral continues. These patterns are alive, but we don't have to stay here. In the fall, we're going to be relaunching Celebrate Recovery. If you haven't heard about this, it's a ministry that still exists here at Jacob's Well, Tuesday night, 6:30 in that cry room. You're welcome to join us. I'll be joining the group there. But we focus on hurts, habits, and hang-ups. It's not just substance. It could be approval. It could be technology. My beautiful bride has written a book on technology tripping out there. She'll be signing books afterwards. No extra charge. But it doesn't matter what the thing is. There's something that is afflicting all of us. Side note, people ask me all the time, is addiction a sin or is it a disease? Right? That's the big thing. So my answer is yes. And my scriptural evidence is Paul says that there's something not good that lives within me. There's something not good that lives within me. It is not me, it is something not good. And I don't care what you call it. But with Celebrate Recovery, it's a 12-step program where Jesus is the pinnacle, our highest power. And so we seek that, and then we surrender into or to him directly. Principle one is that we are powerless over the consequences, and our life has become unmanageable. Again, I remember hearing this when I was knee-deep in it, and somebody said I was powerless, I would have punched him in the nose because they didn't know who I was. I have chronic uniqueness syndrome, just so you know. See, there's some people who know. Lost my joke. Hang on. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups. You don't have to stay here. So you go in this direction, you get stuck. My brother, he passed away November of a year ago. He was one of my best drinking buddies. When I came to faith, he wanted nothing to do with Jesus and really had a hard time with me. We could talk about anything in the world as long as it was sports or the weather. But everything else was kind of taboo. I loved my brother. And through his life, he struggled with addictions just like me. And occasionally things would go horribly wrong. He was very successful. He was a PA, physician's assistant in neurosurgery. He did some things I'm amazed of on the weekends or on business trips. Things would go wrong. He'd grab the steering wheel of his life, and on his own, because he'd be damned if he'd go for a higher power, he'd turn that wheel with all his might. He would seek to move in a different direction, and I could see him change. He would start to treat his wife differently, his kids differently, his self differently. And his strength, eventually, he lost power, and he self-righted back. The only difference between my brother and I is that I managed to surrender to a higher power, and he rescued me. Same family. 2 brothers. Different choices. Shoot. Sorry. We're also implementing the alcohol experiment. This is a 30-day exercise in your muscle of choice. Nothing more, nothing less. We're going to be across the street in the Embodied Center Tuesday, June 2nd, 6 o'clock. You can join us. There'll be a group locally that's going to be meeting, talking. We're reading the book. We're going through it together. That's where you want to be. I love in-person stuff. If you don't want to be in person, you can go online. The book has an online group you can join. You can be anonymous. Just do one of those things. There are the devotionals. There's all of these other tools that we've created, ramps for you to take a next step. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. Running out of time. Third time. Jesus stands at the door of your heart and knocks. It might not be for everybody, but I believe there are some people here that he's speaking to you. And he wants to rescue you. There'll be people up here after the last song to pray with you. God gives us the dignity of choice. All of our choices have consequences. God wants you. We want you to choose life.